The Jaljiilja were a proud and ancient race. Long ago they had ruled a large part of the galaxy. Their ships had been mighty, their technology advanced, and their armies feared by many. But centuries of isolation, wars, and an unknown scourge had forced them to retreat behind the strongest defenses of their homeworld. Now they lived quietly, hidden from the rest of the galaxy, refusing to interact with anyone. The VE, an older and powerful species, had begun expanding their influence. They offered technology, protection, and alliances to many races, but in exchange they demanded loyalty and service. Many species accepted the VE's offers, seeking safety and strength. But the Jaljiilja refused. They did not want help and they did not want to join any alliance. This refusal angered the VE. They saw the Jaljiilja as defiant and weak. Armies were raised. Fleets were constructed. The VE sent warning after warning, but the Jaljiilja ignored them. They trusted their defenses and their hidden knowledge. They believed the galaxy would leave them alone. At first, the Jaljiilja fought alone. Their ships, though aged and poorly maintained, still held some power. Against the VE's fleets, however, they were only delaying the inevitable. Their shields faltered, their weapons struggled against the enemy, and the gap in experience and training became clear. The VE's armies advanced steadily, system by system. Worlds that once looked to the Jaljiilja with fear now watched silently. None came to help. Allies had been lost. Former enemies had turned away. Even the closest races believed it was useless to intervene. A war against the VE was suicide and no one wanted to risk their survival. Desperation grew among the Jaljiilja. Messages were sent into the void. Fleets signaled for help. Ancient star maps were scanned, seeking anyone who might answer their call. But none responded. The VE's shadow stretched farther and farther across the galaxy. Then, unexpectedly, a single message reached the Jaljiilja. It came from a distant species called humans. They were unknown to most, scattered and often busy with their own conflicts. Records showed humans were small in number compared to the galactic giants, yet they had survived countless challenges and wars. The message was simple: "We are coming." The Jaljiilja were puzzled. Could this species truly help them? Could humans, scattered and untested in the larger galactic conflicts, stand against the might of the VE? The message did not explain numbers, tactics, or ships. It simply promised aid. Time passed slowly. Every day the VE advanced, the Jaljiilja defenses weakened further. Their once mighty fleets had been reduced to a fraction of their power. Their planets were under siege. Energy shields flickered. Orbital cannons fired desperately at incoming fleets. Each engagement left more of their forces shattered, more of their world vulnerable. When the VE attacked Jaljiilja, one of the Jaljiilja's main systems, the situation became critical. Jaljiilja was vital, a strategic point that, if lost, would expose the heart of their homeworld. The VE sent thousands of ships, heavily armed, ready to crush any resistance. The Jaljiilja fought with all their might, but their weapons were few, their ships old, and their crews inexperienced. Even as Jaljiilja burned under the VE's assault, the human fleet had not yet arrived. The Jaljiilja wondered if they had been abandoned. Doubts crept into their leaders' minds. Perhaps this distant species had spoken too soon. Perhaps it had underestimated the VE's strength. But then, from the depths of space, small human vessels began appearing on the star charts. At first, they were almost laughably small, ships that looked fragile and simple, nothing like the massive VE capital ships. Yet there was something in their movement, a precision and confidence that belied their size. The VE fleets noticed too. Their admirals laughed at the toy ships approaching. Surely, they thought, no small force could challenge the might of the VE. And yet, as the humans moved closer, their presence alone changed something. The Jaljiilja felt hope for the first time in centuries. They watched in awe as the small vessels arranged themselves in patterns, surrounding key points, readying for a fight that no one fully understood yet. The call for help had been answered. But the galaxy did not yet know the full power of humanity. And so the stage was set. The Jaljiilja waited, the VE prepared to strike, and the humans approached, calm, confident, and unstoppable. The first chapter of a legendary battle was about to begin. The VE fleet loomed large over Jaljiilja, their massive ships filling the star lanes. Thousands of vessels, each bristling with weapons and shields, moved as one. The Jaljiilja forces, though brave, were outnumbered and outgunned. Explosions lit the void as the VE's firepower tore through orbital defenses. For the Jaljiilja, every minute was a test of survival. Each destroyed ship was a reminder of centuries of isolation and lost glory. Yet in the midst of despair, a faint signal appeared on the star charts. a tiny blip moving faster than any Jaljiilja vessel could. The VE admirals noticed it immediately. "What is that?" one demanded. "Send scouts. Identify it." The blip grew larger, and suddenly hundreds of small human ships appeared, emerging from hidden jump points throughout the system. They were simple in design, smaller than even the smallest VE cruisers, but the formations they took were precise, almost ritualistic. Each vessel seemed minor on its own, but together they were a swarm, moving as if guided by a single mind. The Jaljiilja leaders could hardly believe their eyes. Is this our hope?" whispered a counselor. The VE laughed. "Pathetic," one admiral said. "These are toys. We will destroy them in seconds." But the humans did not falter. A human vessel moved forward first, broadcasting a calm message on open channels. "This is the Imperium of Reconciliation. Leave the system now or be considered hostile. We are here to bring the Jaljiilja aid. No interference is allowed." The VE admiral's face turned red. "A single human dares to command us? How insolent!" The human did not respond further. His words alone carried authority that surpassed even the VE's own hierarchy. His presence seemed to ripple through the fleet. The VE ships hesitated, unsure if this was a bluff. Then the humans began firing. At first the shots seemed small, one cannon per ship, but the rate of fire was astonishing. Hundreds of vessels unleashed a constant barrage, their rounds hitting VE ships with deadly precision. The smaller size of human ships allowed them to move swiftly, avoiding the slower, larger VE weapons. Each volley sent waves of shock through the VE fleet, damaging shields, engines and weapon systems. The VE had underestimated the humans. They had assumed size and numbers would win the day. Yet here, in the cold void of space, skill, strategy and courage proved more powerful. The Jaljiilja watched as human ships swarmed the enemy, covering every vulnerable point. They fired relentlessly, each shot purposeful, each movement coordinated. For the first time in generations the Jaljiilja felt hope. Despite the VE's overwhelming power, the humans held the line. Capital ships of the VE were hit one by one. Reactors erupted into fireballs, and entire squadrons were thrown into chaos. The human fleet seemed to anticipate every move, outmaneuvering larger ships with ease. "Impossible," muttered a VE admiral. "How can these creatures fight like this?" "They are not like any species we have faced," said another. "Their ships are small but they fight as one. They are relentless." Hours passed, yet the humans did not slow. They continued to advance, filling the space between the Jaljiilja and the VE with a wall of defiance. For the first time, the VE realized that the battle was no longer guaranteed. They were facing a species that, while small, refused to back down. The Jaljiilja felt a stirring of pride. Their saviors were not grand or flashy. They were simple, determined, and unwavering. Humanity's arrival had changed the battlefield completely. By the time the VE fleet began to regroup, the human forces had already taken control of key positions. Orbital defenses were stabilized and critical systems were shielded from attack. The humans had not only arrived, they had turned the tide. The VE fleets faltered. What they had assumed would be an easy conquest was now a fight for survival. And humanity, calm and resolute, pressed forward without hesitation. In that moment the Jaljiilja realized the truth: they were not alone. Humanity would not abandon a debt, no matter how small or distant. They would come, they would fight, and they would protect those in need. The first wave of human ships moved deeper into Jaljiilja, firing in perfect harmony. The VE could only watch as their armada was overwhelmed by sheer determination and tactical brilliance. The cry for help had been answered. And humanity had arrived. The battle had just begun, but the galaxy would never forget the day humans entered the Jaljiilja system. The battlefield above Jaljiilja was chaos. The VE fleet, confident and massive, had expected an easy victory. But the humans had changed everything. Their ships were smaller, simpler, almost fragile-looking, yet they moved with precision and purpose that no VE admiral could predict. The Jaljiilja watched in awe as the humans revealed their strategy. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The human fleet did not attack all at once. They did not rush in blindly. Instead, they spread across the system in coordinated waves, striking where the VE least expected. Every human ship had one massive cannon, unlike the dozen on a VE capital ship. But humans compensated for this with speed, accuracy, and volume. Each vessel fired rapidly, coordinating with the others. Multiple shots hit the same target in seconds, overwhelming even the strongest VE shields. The VE fleets began to panic. "They are too fast. Too coordinated," shouted an admiral. Our weapons cannot track them. And it was true. The humans moved like a swarm, unpredictable and relentless. Their small size allowed them to dodge heavy fire, and their quick reload times ensured they never paused. They were everywhere, striking in waves that seemed endless. The Jaljiilja felt their hope rising. Ships that had been crippled by the VE suddenly regained ground as the humans took the fight directly to the enemy. Their orbital stations were reinforced, and supply lines were protected by human escorts. Every strike the VE attempted was met with a counterattack from multiple angles. One Jaljiilja commander whispered to his colleague, "They are not just fighting, they are thinking. Every move has purpose." The humans had studied the VE fleet carefully. They did not simply destroy, they outmaneuvered. They targeted weak points, isolated ships from their formations, and forced the VE into chaos. A single human ship could not threaten a VE cruiser, but a coordinated swarm of hundreds, or thousands, was unstoppable. Even the VE began to see the pattern. The humans did not rely on sheer power. They relied on tactics, timing, and teamwork. They exploited the VE's predictability and turned the armada's size into a disadvantage. Every attempt to regroup was met with a fresh wave of human ships, and every VE attack was repelled with skill and speed. The Jaljiilja's morale soared. Their centuries of despair seemed to lift as the humans pressed forward. The VE who had once appeared invincible were now faltering. Ships exploded in fiery bursts. Fleets broke formation. Commanders shouted orders that could not be fulfilled. The humans did not stop. They continued to arrive from jump points scattered across the system, reinforcing each other, covering every critical point. Even vessels that looked like simple, homemade constructs were lethal in numbers, each carrying one devastating cannon capable of punching through VE shields. "What kind of species is this?" a VE admiral yelled. "They are nothing like any enemy we have faced." "They are humans," one of his officers whispered, disbelief in his voice. "And they remember every debt, every promise. They fight with honor, and they do not fail." The Jaljiilja could only watch as their homeworld slowly regained some stability. Key orbital defenses were repaired, civilians were evacuated from the most dangerous areas, and the VE's advance was slowed dramatically. The humans were the shield and the sword, protecting and striking with perfect balance. By the end of the first major engagement, the VE had lost more than a third of their fleet. Entire divisions had been shattered. The humans, though smaller in size and fewer in raw power, had used strategy, speed, and coordination to turn the battle in favor of the Jaljiilja. The message was clear: size and technology alone do not guarantee victory. Intelligence, determination, and courage could achieve the impossible. For the Jaljiilja, hope had returned. They realized that their saviors were not gods or legends. They were humans. Small, brave, clever, and unstoppable when fighting for a debt of honor. The battle had only just begun, but the first lesson was already written in fire and metal. Humanity's strategy was unmatched and their resolve unbreakable. Above Jaljiilja, amidst explosions and blazing fire trails, the humans pressed on. The VE fleets faltered. The Jaljiilja watched, hearts lifted, knowing that help had truly arrived. The stage was set for an epic confrontation. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity had entered the battlefield, and nothing would ever be the same. The battle over Jaljiilja had reached a terrifying intensity. The VE fleet, once confident and imposing, was now struggling to maintain control. The humans had shown their strategy, but what came next was beyond anything the VE had anticipated. Wave after wave of human ships poured into the system. Their numbers seemed endless. They did not march in traditional formations. Instead, they swarmed, moving like living clouds of metal, each vessel small, agile, and deadly. The VE could not predict their movement. Every maneuver was countered before it could even be executed. The Jaljiilja watched in disbelief. "How can so few achieve so much?" one counselor whispered. The answer became clear in the next minutes. Humans did not fight like the VE or the Jaljiilja. They did not rely on overwhelming armor or massive weapons alone. They used coordination, speed, and intelligence. Their tiny ships struck simultaneously at weak points, multiplied their firepower, and then disappeared into the chaos before the VE could retaliate. Even the most heavily armed VE capital ships were forced to react, unable to follow the fast, unpredictable humans. Each barrage from human cannons was precise, destroying shield generators, engines, and weapon platforms. Explosions lit the void like distant stars, casting eerie glows over the battle. "What are they?" a VE admiral shouted in frustration. "They cannot be destroyed. They are humans, one of his officers replied, fear in his voice. And they remember. Every obligation. Every debt. They fight to pay it. The VE had underestimated not just the humans' technology but their resolve. They were relentless, never stopping, never resting, and never giving the enemy a moment to breathe. The Jaljiilja began to participate where they could. Their remaining ships, guided by human tactics, struck alongside the humans. The combination of speed, intelligence, and local knowledge began to shift the balance. These ships were being isolated, overwhelmed, and destroyed. In the heart of Jaljiilja's orbit, a massive V dreadnought moved to crush the defenses. Dozens of human ships swarmed around it. Despite its size, it could not bring its weapons to bear on every attacker. Shots hit its engines, shield arrays, and weapon mounts. One by one, its systems failed, and the mighty vessel exploded in a cascade of fire and debris. The VE fleet began to panic. Their formations collapsed. Ships tried to flee, but the humans anticipated every escape route. The small, fast vessels intercepted retreating ships, forcing them back into the fray. Even the most veteran VE commanders realized that the battle was slipping from their control. The Jaljiilja, watching from their orbital command centers, felt hope for the first time in centuries. They had prepared for defeat. They had expected their civilization to end. But humanity had changed the outcome. Their swarming numbers, combined with precision tactics and determination, made them unstoppable. As the battle continued, the humans' fleet seemed almost infinite. Every destroyed ship was replaced by another, appearing from hidden jump points, reinforcing the assault. Their relentless pressure left the VE reeling. Explosions tore through the fleet. Shielded cruisers were destroyed. Capital ships were torn apart in seconds. The VE had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The VE admiral tried one final command, ordering all ships to concentrate fire on the human flagship. But the humans anticipated it. They split, maneuvered, and attacked from multiple directions. The VE flagship exploded in a blinding flash, signaling the collapse of the entire armada. The battle was over in hours. Thousands of VE ships were destroyed. The survivors fled, broken and battered. Jaljiilja remained in Jaljiilja hands, stabilized by human tactics and relentless defense. The Jaljiilja could hardly believe what had happened. A species long considered minor, scattered, and inexperienced had defeated the most powerful fleet in their region. Humanity had done it not with raw size or force, but with skill, coordination, and unyielding determination. One Jaljiilja leader whispered, eyes wide, "We were saved, by humans. They are small, yet mightier than any of us imagined." The humans did not celebrate. They did not boast. Their ships regrouped, ready to respond if the VE attempted to return. Their calm, steady presence reassured the Jaljiilja. Humanity had come when no one else would. They had paid their debt. And somewhere beyond Jaljiilja, deep in the void of space, humanity's influence quietly reminded the galaxy of one truth: never underestimate those who honor their word. Never doubt those who fight for what is right. The cry for help had been answered. And the VE, once proud and unstoppable, had learned a hard lesson about the strength of humanity. The battle over Jaljiilja had turned the entire system into a storm of fire and debris. The VE fleet, once proud and confident, was in chaos. Human ships moved through the wreckage with precision, targeting every weak point, every vulnerable vessel. The Jaljiilja watched with growing amazement. Their saviors were not just powerful, they were methodical, disciplined, and clever. Each human movement seemed to follow a carefully designed plan, a strategy that none of the VE could predict. One Jaljiilja commander whispered to another, "They do not attack randomly, everything they do has purpose." The humans' plan became clear as the battle progressed. They did not simply aim to destroy the VE fleet, they aimed to force a complete collapse of enemy command and morale. Small groups of human ships bypassed the heaviest fighters and attacked communication hubs, weapon control systems, and power generators. With each strike, the VE fleet became disorganized. Orders went unheeded. Ships collided, fired blindly, and turned back in confusion. Even the most heavily armed VE dreadnoughts were neutralized. One by one, capital ships exploded, ripped apart by a combination of precision human fire and tactical swarm attacks. The human fleet, though smaller in size, struck faster than the VE could respond. The VE admirals could hardly believe what was happening. "How can this be?" one shouted. "Our numbers are greater. Our ships are stronger. Yet they are defeating us." "They fight as one," another muttered, voice trembling. "They do not tire. They anticipate every move. They do not fear. They do not hesitate." The Jaljiilja realized that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology, it was strategy, courage, and honor. They had come to pay a debt. They had come to save a people who could not defend themselves alone. And they would not fail. As the battle continued, the VE fleet began to retreat. Ships that could still move fled the system, leaving behind their dead and their wounded. The human fleet did not pursue recklessly. They allowed the VE to escape, showing restraint and careful judgment. Their goal had never been mindless destruction. It had been to end the threat and protect the Jaljiilja. The Jaljiilja breathed a collective sigh of relief. Their homeworld was safe for now. Their cities were secure, their defenses strengthened, and their hope renewed. For the first time in generations they saw a future free from the VE's oppression. The human admiral appeared on the Jaljiilja command channel. His face was calm, weathered, and commanding. The system is stabilized. We have neutralized the threat. Your people are safe. But remember, he said, his voice firm, this protection comes because a debt was owed. A debt of honor is never forgotten. Humanity remembers its debts. The Jaljiilja leaders bowed in gratitude. They had expected only survival, yet they had received rescue, guidance, and protection. The humans had not only saved their planet, they had restored their pride. The human fleet did not linger. Their ships quietly regrouped, then began departing the system, leaving the Jaljiilja to recover. The VE, humiliated and shattered, would think twice before returning. Humanity had demonstrated a force that could not be ignored. The Jaljiilja slowly realized the true scope of what had happened. They had witnessed not just a battle, but a demonstration of human courage, intelligence, and honor. They had underestimated this distant species, and the mistake had nearly cost the VE everything. Even among the Jaljiilja, discussions began to shift. No longer would they view humanity as a minor species, scattered and untested. They had seen what humans were capable of, their strategy, their strength, and their resolve. They were heroes who did not boast, warriors who did not seek glory, and saviors who acted because it was right. The system began to calm. Smoke and fire still hung in orbit, but the worst was over. Communications resumed, ships repaired, and civilians began returning to their homes. The Jaljiilja were alive, and for the first time in centuries they felt hope. The human fleet, already distant, left behind a lasting impression. Humanity's name would be remembered across the stars, not for conquest but for honor, courage, and the unwavering commitment to help those in need. The VE would not forget either. They had underestimated a species that seemed small and scattered. A species that fought not for domination but for justice and duty. They had learned the hard way, humanity was not a force to be dismissed. And somewhere among the stars humanity moved on, calm, patient, and ready. They had answered the call for the Jaljiilja, and the galaxy had seen the power of humans who honor their word. The first true victory had been achieved. But the legend of humanity had only just begun. The battle over Jaljiilja was over, but the echoes of its destruction lingered across the system. Debris floated in orbit, and smoke from destroyed ships colored the void in red and orange streaks. Yet amid the devastation, the Jaljiilja felt something they hadn't in centuries: hope. Their homeworld was safe. The VE had retreated, their mighty fleet broken and humiliated. The human fleet, which had come without fanfare, had done more than simply fight. They had saved an entire civilization. The Jaljiilja leaders gathered to assess the damage. Ships had been lost, stations destroyed, and systems weakened. Yet the destruction could be repaired. More importantly, their people were alive. Their civilization had survived because a distant species, one they had once considered minor and scattered, had answered their call. In a council chamber orbiting Jaljiilja, a Jaljiilja ambassador spoke to the others. We have learned something today. Not all power is measured by size or technology. Humanity, they are clever, disciplined, and relentless. They fight not for conquest but for honor. Another counselor nodded. Their arrival changed everything. They did not demand tribute. They did not seek control. They came because they had a debt to repay. And they did so without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. Outside, the last of the human ships prepared to depart. Their engines glowed softly against the dark backdrop of space. Pilots and commanders remained calm, their faces showing no triumph, no pride, only quiet satisfaction in a job done well. The Jaljiilja had watched in awe. The humans left behind a lesson that resonated deeply with the Jaljiilja. It was not just about tactics or firepower. It was about principles, courage, and responsibility. Even in the vast, uncaring galaxy, humans remembered their obligations. They remembered debts. They remembered promises. And when the time came, they acted. One young Jaljiilja officer turned to his mentor. "Why did they come for us?" he asked. The mentor smiled, a rare expression for their people. "Because humanity is not like the others. They understand that strength is not just about what you can destroy. True strength is knowing what is right, and acting on it no matter the cost." As the human fleet disappeared into the distant stars, the VE could only retreat and regroup, their arrogance shattered. Across the galaxy, word of the battle spread quickly. Humans had intervened where no one else would. They had defied expectations, defeated the strongest forces, and honored a debt to a distant race. The Jaljiilja began the slow process of recovery. Ships were repaired, systems rebuilt, and defenses strengthened. But alongside the physical reconstruction came a change in perspective. They had seen what humans were capable of, the intelligence, bravery, and unyielding honor that could shift the balance of the galaxy. Leaders spoke in hushed tones. "We were wrong to underestimate them. The humans are small, scattered, and often distracted by their own conflicts. Yet when they act decisively. They fight for what is right, and they never abandon a debt." The lesson was clear. Power alone does not define greatness. Courage, honor, and strategic thinking can overcome any obstacle, even the most powerful adversary. Humanity had shown this truth in every move, every decision, and every battle maneuver. For the Jaljiilja, this lesson would remain long after the scars of war healed. They would remember the day humans answered the call, the day a distant species proved that even in the vast galaxy, one determined people could make all the difference. The human admiral, as he communicated his final words before leaving, reminded the Jaljiilja of one thing: a debt of blood is paid in blood. Humanity remembers its debts. The phrase echoed in the hearts of the Jaljiilja. They understood now that humans were not just warriors, they were guardians, thinkers, and defenders of honor. And they would appear whenever they were needed, without question, without hesitation. As Legia and the Jaljiilja began to rebuild, the galaxy itself seemed to change. Other races took note. The VE were humbled. The Jaljiilja were inspired. And somewhere in the distant reaches of space, humanity moved quietly, prepared for the next call, ready to fight for justice, honor, and those who could not defend themselves. The aftermath of the battle was not only survival, it was a lesson in courage, strategy, and honor. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly formidable. Not through numbers, not through size, but through heart, intellect, and unwavering resolve. The story of Legia would be told for generations. A tale of despair turned to hope, of a race on the brink of extinction saved by the unexpected brilliance and bravery of humans. And humanity? They simply continued on, calm, patient, and always remembering their debts. The galaxy had changed forever after the battle over Legia. The VE had been humiliated, their mighty fleet shattered. The Jaljiilja were safe, their people alive, and their homeworld intact. But even as the dust settled, the humans remained vigilant. Their presence in the system reminded everyone that justice and honor could never be ignored. The Jaljiilja leaders gathered once more to discuss the future. For centuries they had hidden from the galaxy, fearing conflict, fearing power, fearing what had once destroyed them. Now they saw a new path, a path made possible by humanity. "We have been saved by humans," said one elder, voice trembling. "They are unlike any species we have ever known. Not the strongest, not the largest, but the most honorable, clever, and determined. They fight not for glory but for what is right." Another added, "They do not abandon those in need. They do not forget a debt. Their courage is unmatched. Perhaps, the galaxy needs more like them." Above Legia, the remnants of the human fleet regrouped. Ships small and simple, yet deadly, moved together in quiet harmony. The human admiral, a weathered man whose face bore the weight of countless battles, looked upon the system one last time. He did not smile, nor did he boast. He simply nodded, satisfied that the debt had been repaid. A voice came through the communication channel, calm and commanding. "The system is secure. The Jaljiilja are safe. The VE will retreat and think twice before returning. Humanity honors its debts, and we leave this system in peace." The Jaljiilja felt a deep respect for this species. They realized that humanity's strength was not in their numbers or their weapons. It was in their principles, their courage, and their determination to do what is right. They had saved an entire civilization not because they had to, but because they chose to. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the story of humanity's last stand spread quickly. Races that had ignored the Jaljiilja's cries for help now whispered in awe about the humans. They were small, scattered, and often underestimated, but when they acted with precision, courage, and honor. The VE, once feared and unchallenged, now faced a new reality. They had underestimated humans and it had cost them dearly. Their pride was broken, their fleets scattered, and their reputation tarnished. Other species began to see that the balance of power in the galaxy was not solely determined by size or technology. Humans had shown that intellect, strategy, and honor could triumph over overwhelming force. For the Jaljiilja, life slowly returned to normal. Rebuilding was a long and difficult process, but they were no longer alone. Humans had proven that help could come even from the most unexpected places, and that hope could exist even in the darkest times. The young Jaljiilja officer, who had once doubted humanity's ability to intervene, spoke to his mentor. "Will they return?" The mentor smiled. "Perhaps. They always remember. A debt is a debt. And humanity never forgets." As the human fleet disappeared into the stars, a sense of calm settled over the Jaljiilja. They had survived not just because of weapons or numbers, but because a species acted with honor, courage, and determination. Humanity had left a legacy, a lesson that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. The story of Jaljiilja became legend. Children grew up hearing of the humans who arrived when no one else would. Scholars studied their tactics. Leaders remembered their lessons. And the galaxy slowly learned that strength was not always measured in fleets or firepower, but in courage, intelligence, and the unwavering commitment to what is right. Somewhere far away, the humans continued their journey through the stars. They did not boast of victory, nor did they seek fame. Their work was done quietly, their debt repaid. And yet, everywhere their name was spoken, a message echoed: humanity remembers. Humanity honors its debts. Humanity fights for justice even when no one is watching. The Jaljiilja, once isolated and fearful, now had hope for the future. The VE had been defeated. Allies were strengthened. And the galaxy had witnessed the true power of humanity. The last words of the human admiral remained in the minds of all who saw the battle. A debt of blood is paid in blood. Humanity remembers its debts. And with that, humanity's legend grew, a reminder across the stars that courage, honor, and determination could change the fate of an entire civilization, and perhaps one day the entire galaxy.